Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yes, welcome back.
This time, we are taking a look at a fascinating book
Yes, very fascinating.
called The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Yes, Robert Greene's work.
So have you read this one?
I have read this one.
Okay, great.
But it's quite something.
Yeah, so this book is basically all about how to gain power.
Yeah.
And how to wield power.
And how to keep it.
Right, and it's full of all these sort of like Machiavellian strategies.
Yes, and historical anecdotes. It's really quite a journey.
It is, and I will say before we jump in here.
Yes, of course.
We're not necessarily endorsing all of these laws.
Of course not.
Right.
Some of them are a bit morally ambiguous, let's say.
Yeah, a bit ruthless, perhaps.
Oh, indeed.
But we're going to do our best to present them in an objective way and let you, the listener, decide
As always.
what to make of them.
Precisely.
So, shall we dive right in?
Let's dive in.
With law number 1.
Law number 1.
Never outshine the master.
Yes, a class.
So this law is all about being aware of the egos.
Yes, the
Of the people in power above you.
The people above you.
Right, and Greene opens with a pretty compelling story.
He does love a good story.
About this guy named Nicolas Fouquet.
Nicolas Fouquet, yes.
Who was the finance minister?
Finance minister, quite.
King Louis XIV.
King Louis XIV.
Of France. And basically, Fouquet throws this lavish party.
Lavish? Oh my, yeah.
Hoping to impress the king. Yeah.
Trying to win favor, you see.
Right.
But it backfires spectacularly.
It does. He ends up imprisoned.
Imprisoned by the king.
Because he's outshined him.
Outshone the king. How ironic.
So what went wrong?
Well, Fouquet, he failed to understand a fundamental rule of power.
Which is?
Never make the master feel insecure.
Insecure.
Yes. By showcasing your own brilliance, you might inadvertently highlight their perceived shortcomings.
So instead of being impressed,
the king felt threatened.
Threatened.
Exactly. Here he is, the most powerful man in France, yet his own finance minister's party outshines anything he himself could have imagined.
So the takeaway is?
Be mindful of the power dynamics at play.
Right.
Make your master, your boss, your superior feel like they're the brightest star in the sky.
Even if they're not.
Especially if they're not.
Okay, so don't outshine, elevate.
Precisely. Elevate them, make them feel indispensable.
And a good historical example of this is?
Oh, there are many.
Well, Greene talks about Galileo, right?
Galileo, a master strategist.
So Galileo discovers the moons of Jupiter.
A groundbreaking discovery. Changes everything we thought we knew about the cosmos.
But instead of taking all the credit for himself.
Which most would have done, let's be honest.
Right.
He very shrewdly dedicates his discovery to the Medici family.
Medicis.
One of the most powerful families in Italy at the time.
And not only that.
Oh, he went even further.
What did he do?
He suggested that the 4 moons he discovered orbiting Jupiter were symbolic.
Symbolic of?
Of the 4 Medici sons.
Oh, wow.
Talk about playing the game.
That is masterful.
Masterful.
So he took something that could have easily overshadowed the Medicis.
Their wealth, their influence, their power.
And he turned it into?
A cosmic endorsement of their greatness.
Wow. So the lesson here is?
Perception is everything.
Right.
It's not enough to simply possess power. You have to be seen to possess it. And more importantly, you have to make those above you feel secure in their own power.
It makes you wonder how often we unknowingly commit this blunder in our own lives.
Oh, I'm sure it happens all the time.
Do we steal the show without realizing it?
Perhaps.
Are we too quick to highlight our accomplishments, potentially making our superiors feel threatened?
It's a valid question and one worth pondering.
It is.
The takeaway here is awareness. By understanding this law, we can navigate these dynamics more effectively. It's not about being a sycophant.
Right.
It's about recognizing the importance of perception.
And how our actions, even those with good intentions,
even with the best of intentions,
can be perceived by those in positions of power.
Precisely.
Okay, so be strategic with your brilliance.
Strategic indeed.
Got it.
Excellent.
Let's move on to a law that feels like it's straight out of a military playbook.
Oh, this should be good.
Law 8. Make other people come to you.
Ah, yes, the art of strategic baiting.
Strategic baiting. I like it.
Think of a fisherman casting a line.
Oh?
They don't chase after the fish, do they?
Yeah.
They create an irresistible lure and wait for the fish to bite.
So it's about patience.
Positioning is key.
And understanding what the other party desires.
Exactly. You have to know what they want, what they crave.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Good.
Give me an example. How does this play out in the real world?
Well, Greene illustrates this law with a fascinating story.
I love his stories.
As we all do.
They're always so vivid.
Indeed, this one involves Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia.
Emperor Haile Selassie.
okay? And his encounter with a rebellious warlord by the name of Bolcha,
Balcha, rebellious warlord.
quite a character, this Bolcha, amasses an army of 10,000 soldiers.
1,000, wow.
Decides he's going to take on the emperor.
Bold move.
Very bold. Some might even say foolish. Well, Selassie, being the shrewd strategist he was, saw this coming.
Okay.
He had strategically positioned his forces.
So he was ready for Balcha.
Oh, yes, he knew exactly what he was doing, outnumbering Balcha's forces significantly.
So Telja walks right into a trap.
Essentially, yes, he thinks he's making a power move.
But he's playing right into Selassie's hands.
Precisely. He's been lured into a vulnerable position.
So how do we apply this luring tactic in everyday situations?
The million-dollar question.
Right, we're not all emperors battling warlords.
Thankfully not.
So let's say we're in a tough negotiation, or we want to impress a potential client.
Excellent examples.
What's the bait?
It's about making yourself the prize, not the pursuer.
Ooh, I like that.
Create a sense of scarcity, of exclusivity.
So instead of chasing after that client,
You focus on building your expertise.
your reputation.
Make them come to you, believing they need what you have to offer.
It's like reversing the power dynamic.
Yeah,
Shifting from the one asking to the one being sought after.
precisely.
I like it. It's subtle.
Subtlety is key.
It's strategic.
Always be strategic. It's about subtly shifting the perception of power.
Subtlety seems to be a recurring theme in these laws. Speaking of which, let's move on to Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. This one really speaks to me. I'm all about letting actions do the talking.
As well you should. Greene is a firm believer in demonstration over explication. He argues that actions are far more persuasive than words, which can often be twisted or ignored. He tells a fascinating story of a wise vizier falsely accused of treason. Instead of pleading his innocence, he cleverly uses the 10 days he's given before his supposed execution to prove his loyalty through action. The kicker. He even wins over the very huntsman assigned to carry out the sentence.
Wow, talk about making a point. It reminds me of a quote by a famous poet. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit.
A perfect illustration of this law. And if we look at history, we see it play out time and time again. Take Otto von Bismarck, for instance, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia. He dreamt of a unified Germany under Prussian rule, but he knew his military wasn't ready for a showdown with Austria, a necessary obstacle on the path to unification. So what did he do? He publicly championed peace, even though behind the scenes he was itching for a fight.
Wait, so he was playing the long game, pretending to advocate for peace to achieve the opposite. That's some next-level strategy.
Exactly, and it worked brilliantly. His supposed dedication to peace fooled everyone, including the king, who, impressed by Bismarck's sincerity, promoted him to a powerful position. This gave Bismarck the leverage he needed to bolster the military and ultimately orchestrate the very war he'd been planning all along.
It's like a magic trick misdirection on a grand scale. But how do we translate this into our own lives? We're not all aspiring emperors or chancellors, at least I don't think so.
Probably not. But the principle holds true in everyday situations. Think of it this way. Instead of wasting your breath trying to convince someone of something, find a way to show them actions are undeniable.
Show, don't tell it.
Yeah.
I like it. It could be as simple as volunteering for a challenging project at work to prove your capabilities, or consistently going above and beyond for a client to demonstrate your dedication.
Precisely. It's about aligning your actions with your goals. Now, let's switch gears and delve into a law that's a bit more, shall we say, seductive law 32. Play to people's fantasies.
Ooh, this one sounds interesting. Isn't this the law that explores how our desires, our longing for something more, can be used to influence us?
Absolutely. Greene argues that we humans are wired for escapism. We crave narratives, illusions that offer us an escape from the mundane or a shortcut to our deepest desires. And those who understand this primal craving hold a certain power.
It reminds me of those elaborate con games you hear about, like the one Greene describes from the 1870s, the diamond mine hoax orchestrated by a couple of swindlers named Arnold and Slack. They played on people's fantasies of striking it rich by creating this whole elaborate ruse, a fake diamond mine that had even seasoned investors convinced.
And that's the genius of it. They weren't selling diamonds, they were selling a fantasy, a shortcut to wealth and status. They tapped into a universal human yearning, the allure of something for nothing.
Which makes you wonder, how often do we fall prey to this manipulation in our own lives? I mean, think about the world we live in, advertising, social media, entertainment. It's all about crafting compelling narratives, idealized versions of reality that play on our deepest desires and insecurities.
An excellent point. We're bombarded with images and messages designed to make us crave something, whether it's a product, a lifestyle, or a version of ourselves we see reflected back in carefully curated online personas.
Which begs the question, is awareness enough to combat this? Or are we all, to some extent, susceptible to this manipulation?
That's a question each of us must grapple with, but knowledge is power. By understanding how this law operates, we're better equipped to spot these tactics, to question the narratives we're being sold, and ultimately to make more conscious choices.
To separate the fantasy from reality. So we've delved into some individual laws, each offering a unique glimpse into the mechanisms of power. But I'm curious, are there any overarching themes, any connecting threads that weave these laws together?
Most definitely. One of the most prominent themes is the importance of mastering your emotions. Greene emphasizes self-control and detachment as essential tools for anyone seeking to navigate the game of power. Emotions, especially impulsive ones like anger or frustration, can cloud your judgment and make you vulnerable to manipulation.
It's about being strategic, not reactive thinking before you speak, considering the potential consequences of your actions.
Precisely. Another recurring theme is the power of observation. Greene stresses the need to become a student of human nature, to learn to read people's motivations and desires, to understand their weaknesses and how those weaknesses can be leveraged.
So it's about being observant, right? Like
Yeah.
really paying attention to people.
Exactly. It's about becoming a student of human nature, learning to read between the lines, so to speak.
Because once you understand people's motivations, their insecurities,
You can anticipate their moves, you can predict their reactions.
and then use that knowledge to your advantage.
Precisely. It's like chess. You're always thinking a few steps ahead.
Speaking of strategy, another key theme that seems to run through these laws is the importance of appearances.
Yes. Image is everything.
Right. It's not enough to simply possess power. You have to project it.
Exactly. Greene argues that the image you project is just as important, if not more so, than your actual abilities.
It's about carefully crafting your persona, your reputation.
Think about someone like Julius Caesar, a brilliant general and strategist, no doubt. But he also understood the importance of spectacle, of creating a captivating narrative around his persona.
Right, his triumphant return to Rome after conquering Gaul. The parades, the speeches, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. It was all carefully orchestrated to project an image of power and invincibility.
So it's not just about what you do, it's about how you're perceived.
Precisely, perception shapes reality.
Which makes you wonder, are these laws really so timeless? I mean, they were written centuries ago. Do they still hold water in our modern world?
I'd argue they're even more relevant today. In our age of hyperconnectivity and relentless self-promotion, image is everything.
Think about the rise of social media influencers, for example.
Perfect example. They've mastered the art of Law 32, play to people's fantasies.
They create these perfectly curated online personas projecting an image of effortlessness, whether it's wealth, beauty, success.
And millions buy into it, aspiring to these often unattainable and often unrealistic ideals.
It's a stark reminder that we're all susceptible to these tactics, whether we realize it or not.
Which brings us back to the importance of awareness. Because here's the thing. Understanding these laws isn't about condoning manipulation or turning you into some sort of Machiavellian mastermind.
Right. It's not about being ruthless or stepping on everyone to get to the top.
Exactly. It's about empowering you to level the playing field, to protect yourself from being played.
To make more conscious choices.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that these power dynamics are at play in every aspect of our lives, from our personal relationships to our professional endeavors.
And by understanding the rules of the game,
you can choose how you want to play.
You can navigate these dynamics with intention, with awareness, and most importantly, with integrity.
Well said. Ultimately, the most effective players are those who can leverage this knowledge ethically and strategically to achieve their goals while remaining true to their values.
This has been an incredibly deep dive, a fascinating, if a little unsettling exploration of the often shadowy world of power dynamics.
Indeed, power is a double-edged sword. It can be used for good or for evil.
It's up to each of us to decide how we wield it.
Wise words.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
And for you listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Which of these laws resonated with you the most? What are some real-world examples you've observed? Let us know. Until next time, stay curious and stay empowered.
And stay vigilant.